Have you ever clicked submit on a form or purchased something online and gotten that loading spinner? Have you ever wondered what's actually happening behind the scenes? The kind of browser code, aka JavaScript, that's running behind the scenes in this case is called asynchronous code, or async for short. Async code is running all the time in your web browser, whether it be in those examples I just mentioned or pretty much any other time that the website you're on is making requests and calls to external servers, web services, and other websites. The great thing about asynchronous code is that it's non-blocking, which means that your whole web page doesn't lock up while those calls are being resolved. You're still able to use the site while that code is working in the background. Isn't that great? Working with async code is one of the most prevalent aspects of doing front-end development, along with wondering if CSS has any logic to it at all. The most central data type in all of async programming is called a promise. So if you want to be a front-end developer, you've got to know how promises work. So what is a promise? Think of a promise like an application to university. Your application hasn't been sent until you've gathered your materials, written your essays, and gotten recommendations. That's the first stage. Then you send the application and its status is pending. Finally, the decision comes back and it's either accepted or rejected.
Oh my god, I got into Princeton too.
A promise is like a college application and that it's always either pending, fulfilled, or rejected. So in this case, a promise is like a placeholder for the final word on your application. But what does it actually look like in the code? Well, the promise data type I mentioned earlier is built into JavaScript, so you can write your own promise by calling the new keyword on the promise object and assigning that promise to a variable. The promise object also generates a pair of functions that we can call resolve and reject, which are useful for doing stuff in those scenarios. So let's write an example of a promise here and call it form submission. We'll wait for an arbitrary amount of time and then resolve the promise here. What does that look like in practice when we're actually interacting with promises though? Well, there are two standard ways. One is with a technique called promise chaining by using the .then syntax you see here. The .then is invoked when the value is finally passed back to the promise that's associated with it. The other standard pattern is called async await, in which you define an async function and then await the resolution of its promised values, like so. This pattern was standardized in ES 2017 and is probably the most standard way of working with promises at this point. So that's a 3-minute intro to promises. I hope this has demystified them a bit and helped you to feel more confident in moving forward with your web development journey.